Okay, I think we can get started. And as a reminder to everyone that this meeting is for the DAO, this means that you can unmute yourself at any point, join the conversation, or start one of your own. Okay, why don't we get started with updates from Beanstalk Farms? Guy, how's everything with you?
Hey, Mod, doing well. Let's see, I can give a couple updates. This morning had a call with some folks from the Code Arena team. So for context, with regard to BIPs moving forward that ship new code, I think it probably makes sense to have some sort of period where it's listed as in scope in the Immunify program. Perhaps we can also set up some audit competitions like with projects like C4 or Code Arena. And I think it's probably not in the cards to test out Code Arena on the next BIP, but hopefully sometime in January we can do a test trial of that, and I think it makes a lot of sense to, have that along with being in scope of the Immunify program and post Halborn audit. So stay tuned for updates on that, possibly next month sometime. Otherwise, I think most of the documentation for BIP 30 is queued up and ready to go with regards to the white paper, the almanac, and the technical docs. And yeah, I mean, over the next week or so, there's sort of a mountain of stuff to update for the Seraph BIP with regard to BCM processes, BIC processes, things like that. So I'll be heads down on that. And after that, going to be spending some more time thinking about how we find more engineers, particularly on the front end side of things, which has been a bottleneck. So if you are an engineer, have any friends that are engineers that might be interested in working on Beanstalk, let me know.
Thanks, Guy. Can you maybe also update us on what's the status of BIP 30? Did it pass?
So I think the quorum calculation on the UI at the moment is a little bit imperfect, but given the few number of withdrawals over the last week that happened during the voting period, I think it's pretty safe to say that it's in good shape to pass in a couple hours.
Okay, sounds good, and thank you for the update. All right, Farmer Dan, do you want to give us some updates on marketing at your end?
Mod, I don't know if you saw his message in the chat.
I see it now. Okay, and we are also waiting for an update from Dev. Maybe Sweet Red Beans?
Yeah, hey Mod.
How's it going?
Going well. How are you doing?
Doing well here, sir.
Good. A short update from me today, but sort of working on some of the details on the pod marketplace V2 graph. Hopefully the graph is, well, sort of working on some of the last minute like zooming and some of the smaller details with regards to the chart in particular. But the idea is to build it in such a way that it's sufficiently generalized so that if we would like to build other markets, we can use the same components. And so that's sort of from now until the end of the year, will probably take the majority of my time. And then I think hopefully by tomorrow, we have another designer on Beanstalk Farms who's working on the claim and do X capability. And so hopefully by tomorrow, we have a finished spec for the front end team to sort of go and build that. And then we've made, we're getting the rest of the sort of color palettes and theming into a UI kit so that, and all the colors so that we can sort of make that extensible for the future. So in the case, you can sort of think of like, if somebody were to go build I know there's a Beansprout grant right now for the coop, and provided we find, a designer who wants to take on that work, the goal is to have the UI kit in a place where they could, sort of just come in and grab all the components and the colors and the styles that they need and just sort of extend them. So that's sort of in progress. Maybe still a few weeks out from finishing that, but yeah, that's sort of the last week or so and sort of where we're going.
So SRB, you said that you'll be working on Do you say like designs that can be used as modules later by others? Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct. Yeah. So the goal is to basically create a Figma artifact that can be sort of cloned, and in that Figma artifact, you would have like a base component, all of the padding and spacing, all of the border radius, and all of the icons, basically all and the colors, so that if somebody wanted to, they have basically a starting point to like go build some Beanstalk UI, which is maybe separate from the core app. And that's sort of the idea behind the UI kit.
Okay, and you gave that as an example, or for example, building the UI for the coupe, they may utilize things like that, or this kit, for example.
That's the hope. Yeah, hopefully by the end of the year we're finished with this, and so if we end up finding a product designer or somebody or UX person who wants to work on the coupe, they'd be able to use this artifact.
Okay, great. Anything else with Red Beans?
I think that's it from my end. If any of you are listening, or you have a friend who's a product designer who would like to help out with some Beanstalk work, I mean, we have plenty of work to do. So, please DM me or feel free to make an introduction. But otherwise, that's it on my end.
All right, thank you. I'm going to read the development updates from Silo Chat, and then maybe we can go back to marketing. So Silo Chat dropped the update. I'm going to read it or read it out loud. So it's infrastructure month, and the team is focused heavily on writing docs, nailing processes with auditors, and generally setting up things to grow, as Guy mentioned. So what's in progress right now is the UI, where the team is migrating the existing pod market chart and graphs to the new layout designed by Sweet Red Beans, and then updating the data to pull from the latest subgraph that was set up by Cujo. Otherwise, the work in progress is updating the base documentation, and then the silo facet docs, and there are naming changes there as well. And then lastly, Moon is also working on Tractor. Okay. All right, Farmer Dan.
Hey guys. Yeah, so let's see here. Of the past week, a new episode of the Bean Pod was put out, talking about Paradox. Some of the novel concepts they're bringing into, a betting protocol, as well as some stuff about Root. There was a new Bean Bowl song that was put on YouTube. And also the bi-weekly Bean went out on December 2nd, so maybe a little over a week ago. And then on my end, I uploaded the marketing content calendar up to Notion. And kind of to just go over that a little bit, it's just basically a weekly schedule for different releases that we have going on, whether it be the audio team putting together new video, or a podcast, Radio DeFi, BeanPod, that kind of stuff, and then also just some stuff that I want to start doing as well. So I mean, the goal here is to reach the point where we're putting out some sort of high quality content or media writing 3 to 5 days a week. Usually that BeanPod type of stuff on Mondays, middle of the week doing some sort of like soundbite and explainer stuff, and then wrapping up the week with a thread. A little bit out of sorts this week, getting over being sick and everything like that, but expect one of those sound bites to come out today. And then, we'll just try and get more consistent on putting this stuff out in accordance with the calendar as the month goes on. So that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you, Farmer Dan, and I wish you a speedy recovery. And I also dropped a link to the latest Bean Bowl song in the Barnyard chat. Okay, I think that's it for Beanstalk Farms. Syncubate, I see that you're here with us. Did you want to give us an update on the BOP that you propose or plan on proposing?
Hey, Mod, do you hear me all right?
I hear you.
Great. Yeah, so thank you. BOP2, had a lot of deliberation about that. As everybody's aware, I wanted to thank everybody again for all their feedback and input. Really appreciate it. Over the past week, we've had some suggestions and updated the draft based off of the feedback we got in the channel from the community. So looks like we're good to go. Austin, or Guy rather, reached out to me, told me we had to cut a couple hundred characters so it would fit within the snapshot character limit. So that looks like it's squared away, and hopefully if the BCM is available to post it tomorrow or this weekend, looks like we'll go forward from there. So thank you again, everybody, for that and for your patience and understanding. Decentralized governance is not easy, and I think it's something that everybody's learning, and I think it's been a solid learning experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Sync. And saying goes, we're learning or doing this and figuring it out together. So when do you expect to, or when can we expect, voting to open for this BOP or BOP?
I believe if the BCM is able to post it, the snapshot tomorrow, that was what we were planning. But I'm going to defer to Guy and the BCM on that.
Okay, so we will keep an eye, and I believe there'll be an announcement once it goes live, anyways.
Yeah, once a snapshot posted, Guy's going to reach out to me, and I'll go ahead and post the announcement and keep on top of that.
Sounds good. Okay, Publius, any thoughts on your end or updates that you'd like to share?
Hey, Mod. A relatively quiet week on this end. As you read from Chad's mention, it's Infrastructure Month, and we're actively and excitedly participating in it, trying our best to help document the contracts and really get things to a point where new devs or new auditors or new people that are engaging in the Beanstalk ecosystem have as little friction as possible to really immerse themselves in it. And one of the main limiting factors to date has been cohesive and comprehensive technical documentation. The agronomics handbook that just dropped is a great step in that direction, but getting the contracts themselves really cleanly annotated, that's probably the best thing that can be done on that front, and therefore trying to help out as much as possible on that front. And otherwise, we had previously mentioned either in class or perhaps in the DAO meeting our intention to write like an end of year roadmap of some sort, which we hope will lay out to some extent our understanding of the lay of the land at the moment and where things are probably going or where we can see them going. And that's while we haven't put pen to paper, if you will, that's also been top of mind during Infrastructure Month, is really trying to figure out what are the important things and how to best articulate them and our thoughts on them. So not too much work to show on that front at the moment, but hopefully by the end of the year we'll be able to publish something. And we don't intend to publish that with Beanstalk Farms or with anyone else. We're just going to publish that as Publius as of now, and it'll just kind of be our thoughts on things. And so take them or leave them. And maybe the only other thing worth noting is that Seraph, that process, which has now been going on pretty actively for 2 months, maybe even 3 months at this point, with significant back and forth between ourselves, Beanstalk Farms, and Alborn and their Seraph team, in order to try to get this up and running. The hope is to have the Seraph BIP and all of the associated things that go with it. And just because we're talking about it, we can't take almost any credit for it. There's a large lift happening here, but don't I believe the intention is for the members of the BSC to remain anonymous when they propose incorporating Seraph to protect the integrity of the Seraph run books, and so can't actually shout out any of the members of the BSC, but would just say, which would be the Beanstalk Seraph Committee if it's created by the DAO by the Seraph vote, but would just say that we've been witnessing just how much work and thought and effort has been going into trying to create a useful extra layer of security that, well, at the moment, because Beanstalk currently has off-chain governance, may not be the most practical or practically useful thing in the world. As the DAO starts to prepare itself to hopefully move back to on-chain governance, having Seraph in place is hopefully going to be a major layer of protection or bumper, if you will, in our collective movement back to on-chain governance, which we know is somewhat untested waters, certainly treacherous waters, and therefore having some extra layers of protection probably makes sense. So just want to shout out those members as a collective that have been working on that. There's been hours and hours and hours and hours of calls trying to figure out what are the right steps for Seraph to take in order to actually check that things are happening as they should, and defining it in a codified fashion has not been such a simple task. And so as really 2 months of intense work, again, maybe a little bit longer than that in total, but 2 months of intense work is close to winding down. I think the hope is to have the final review call on Wednesday with them. The hope is to have something to present to the DAO mid-December, and I think it's pretty novel. So it'll be very interesting to see what everyone thinks about it. And the DAO is always such a thoughtful and critical, and I use that term very positively in this context, very critical group of people to present new ideas to, and therefore excited to see how this Seraph concept is received. Obviously, it was presented to the DAO in a DAO meeting by Halborn a while back, but now this will actually be pretty substantive, hopefully, even though the details of the run books themselves will remain private to protect their integrity. I think that whatever is going to be presented to the DAO hopefully will be indicative of the amount of work and thought that's gone into it, and at least on this end, are very excited about it. So that's maybe the only other thing to note.
Thank you, Publius, and that's a lot of work in progress. Okay, before ending this meeting, I had maybe something to discuss, and that is maybe, Publius, for your thoughts and the rest of the DAO as well. So we have challenges, let's say, or there is a challenge in passing BIPs or governance in general. And one of the things that play a role and may not be a determining factor, but it is something that has a factor in it, let's say, is the stock that's held by Beanstalk Farms. And maybe we can go back to why does Beanstalk Farms hold stock. So the way that currently budgets are passed is that Beanstalk Farms will hold contributors' pay ahead of time in the silo. And then when it's time to pay, that's when the transfer goes from the Beanstalk Farms wallet to the individual contributors, let's say. During this period of time, this stock counts or is part of quorum. So Beanstalk Farms right now does not vote, but with it not voting, that makes, let's say, the passing of BIPs more difficult or harder. So my question is it appropriate for Beanstalk Farms to vote, and that vote be or is part of what the first of all, how does Beanstalk Farms vote? Maybe first of all, is it okay for Beanstalk Farms to vote, and then the second question is how do they vote as one, and then lastly, do they maybe take the contributors' vote and becomes a representative vote? Does that make sense, Publius and everyone else? And what are your thoughts?
I think it does make sense, but we'll kind of defer to the DAO to comment before we do so. if anyone wants to.
Do you know by chance the percentage of like the stock held by the DAO?
I believe right now, if I'm
Held by
correct,
the DAO or held by Beanstalk Farms?
The farms.
I guess
Uh,
100% of the stock is held by the DAO.
Okay.
Yeah. Currently it's 0.35%.
yeah, so it's a small percentage, but it plays a role, and maybe we can discuss it from now, as it may grow in the future. So it becomes a point of discussion from now.
Well, I know Safani and others talking about the snapshot governance and how to do custom strategies. That could be one way as well. Tack onto that, and, like remove the stock on the DAO. But as we transition to on-chain governance, I'm not sure where to go from there.
And Syncubate also shared the link that's about delegating votes or a delegate program, and he shared an example of what Maker does. So I'm just saying that for clarity. Okay, what do others think?
I want to take credit for Aliceros's ideas here, but I was discussing this briefly with them, and they had mentioned, in the event that it is ratified that Beanstalk Farms could vote on anything, may make sense to exclude certain proposals like Beanstalk Farms committee proposals, perhaps budget BIPs, just cases where, there's potentially some sort of conflict of interest.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is this just doesn't scale to on-chain governance, as Breen was saying.
Why does it not scale to on-chain governance?
Well, it's like you'd have to encode in the BIP that if the BIP, like in the rules of BIPs, that if the BIP minted beans to the address in the BIP, then that address can't vote for the BIP or something like that. And it's unclear, A, how you would implement meta-level governance rules around what, limiting who can vote on specific BIPs like that. And separately, it's unclear whether you even want to implement general rules like that. So when governance is being done by a multi-sig and on Snapshot, where Snapshot is highly manually adjustable to some extent, or the Beanstalk website and how it displays the votes cast on Snapshot can be customized, certainly. It's unclear that those customizations actually map to on-chain governance. Now, in theory, you could probably set things up to do arbitrary things, but unclear in the case of updating a smart contract. In this case, what are the limitations that can be placed on the system with the goal to remain generally flexible? So in this case, you'd have to have now like specific rules that limit the viability of a BIP or certain ability for voters to vote on a BIP. It becomes very complex.
I mean, personally, was not imagining this being codified on chain. There's probably like 20 plus processes that Beanstalk Farms follows that were ratified by the DAO but are not on chain. And
yeah, but the question is, when voting moves back to on chain, how to count the stock, right? So if a wallet can't vote, it does seem weird to count their stock in the vote. But again, this goes back to then there's some. Maybe you could have it that included in the BIP proposal is, a list of wallets that can't vote, but then obviously that's a problem if you can just propose a BIP that you can say who can vote and who can't vote. So again, this isn't such a simple problem to solve.
What do we think about always excluding the Beanstalk Farms wallet from quorum? So the amount of stock that wallet holds does not count.
Definitely easier to blacklist certain wallets from governance. Not sure that's the right way to handle things, but it's definitely going to be you can implement that on chain for sure.
I think it's not something that we would have to implement on chain. I think this could just be a policy that Beanstalk Farms follows. Ultimately, it's Beanstalk Farms that's voting, right?
Yeah,
So
but you're trusting, I guess, or there is an element of trust here. What guarantees that they won't vote and what they're not, meant to
And
vote
if Beanstalk Farms has 1% of the stock, now for Beanstalk Farms to not be included in the vote or not be allowed to vote but be included in the quorum, now you actually need 50% of the total stock, but only 99% of the stock can vote. So you need well over a majority. So it's unclear without codifying it on chain how you would do this and preserve a simple majority.
I think the case I was talking about is if Beanstalk Farms is allowed to vote, but let's say, for example, not on budget bips. I don't think that the inability to vote on budget bips is necessarily something that needs to be codified, in a smart contract. It
So
sort of
good luck
seems
getting
like
the budget passed. So yeah, if that's the way to do it, sure. But that seems to me to be like a very reflexive voting mechanism, where the people that are sponsoring the BIP can't support it, and in fact, in practice, sort of are voting against it, because not voting is like voting against. Seems very strange.
Okay. Okay. I think maybe we can think about this together, and together as all of us, the DAO, and we can maybe bring it up and discuss it another time, or the next DAO meeting, or whenever, as we bring up more thoughts on it. Okay, I'll give it a minute, see if anyone else has something to bring up to discuss before ending this meeting. All right. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you in next week's DAO meeting. Have a good day.